Welcome to Lions News Fan Report, your number one destination for the freshest update, the hottest takes, and the most in-depth analysis on our beloved Detroit Lions. Today, I've got something that's going to shake up your entire perspective on this roster heading into the next couple of seasons. We're talking about a situation that's been quietly brewing behind the scenes, something that could fundamentally alter the Lions' offensive identity as we know it. This isn't just another routine roster move or contract discussion. This is about one of the most beloved players on this team, a warrior who's been absolutely instrumental in our success, and a decision that the front office might be forced to make sooner rather than later. Stick with me through this entire video because I'm going to break down exactly what's happening, why it matters, and what it means for the future of Lions football. So here's the situation unfolding in Detroit right now. We've got one of the most dynamic backfield combinations in the entire National Football League. A 1-2 punch that's been absolutely devastating for opposing defenses week in and week out. When you look at what this tandem has accomplished together, it's nothing short of historic. We're talking about the first running back duo in NFL history to both eclipse the 1,000-yard mark in a single season. That's not just impressive, that's legendary. But here's where things get complicated, and this is what I need you to understand as we move forward. Success sometimes creates difficult decisions. And the Lions are staring down one of those crossroads moments that could define this franchise for years to come. David Montgomery's been everything we could have asked for since he arrived in Detroit back in 2023. Think about the context of that signing for a moment. Here's a guy who spent his first several seasons grinding it out with the Chicago Bears, our division rivals, establishing himself as one of the most reliable and physical running backs in the league. When his rookie contract expired, he made the decision to join us here in Detroit, and from day one, he's been an absolute force. Montgomery brought that old-school mentality, that punishing running style that wears down defenses and sets the tone for our entire offensive approach. He's been the hammer, the closer, the guy who gets those tough yards when we absolutely need them. But then Jahmyr Gibbs entered the equation. And suddenly we had something truly special on our hands. Gibbs brought a completely different dimension to our ground game with his explosive speed, his versatility in the passing game, and his ability to take it to the house from anywhere on the field. The combination of Montgomery's power and Gibbs' explosiveness created matchup nightmares for defensive coordinators across the league. Teams couldn't stack the box against Montgomery without leaving themselves vulnerable to Gibbs breaking one. And they couldn't play light to contain Gibbs without getting physically dominated by Montgomery. It was the perfect marriage of complementary skill sets, and it propelled our offense to heights we hadn't seen in Detroit in decades. Now here's where we need to talk about the business side of football, because as much as we love the game and the players who make it special, the NFL is ultimately a business. According to recent analysis from Bleacher Report, Montgomery has emerged as potentially the most valuable trade asset on the Lions roster, outside of untouchables like Gibbs himself. This isn't speculation based on performance issues or locker room problems, because Montgomery has been nothing but professional and productive. This is purely about roster construction, salary cap management, and long-term planning. The reality is that running backs have a relatively short shelf life in this league, and when you have two elite talents at the same position, eventually you're going to have to make a choice about which one to build around for the future. The timeline being discussed centers around the conclusion of the 2025 season, which gives us a clearer picture of how the front office is thinking about this. They're not looking to move Montgomery immediately, which makes sense given how integral he's been to our success and how important he'll continue to be as we make this championship push. But once we get through next season, Montgomery will be approaching that age where running backs typically start to decline, and his contract situation will force the Lions to make a decision. Do they invest significant resources in extending a running back who will be on the wrong side of 30, or do they pivot towards securing Gibbs with a long-term deal while he's still in his prime years? From a pure football perspective, the logic behind prioritizing Gibbs is pretty straightforward. He's younger, which means more prime years ahead of him. He's got that game-breaking speed that you simply cannot teach or replicate. He's versatile enough to line up anywhere on the field, which gives offensive coordinators maximum flexibility in how they deploy him. And perhaps most importantly in today's NFL, he represents the modern prototype of what you want from the running back position. Someone who can impact the game both on the ground and through the air. When you're building a championship roster for sustained success, those are the kinds of factors that influence decision-making at the highest levels. But here's what makes this situation so fascinating from a trade perspective. Montgomery isn't just valuable to the Lions. He'd be incredibly valuable to a lot of teams around the league. We're talking about a proven veteran who's demonstrated he can carry a heavy workload, who's been incredibly durable throughout his career, who brings leadership and toughness to any locker room he enters, and who's still performing at an elite level. If the Lions did decide to explore trade possibilities after the 2025 season, they wouldn't be selling low on a declining asset. They'd be trading from a position of strength, potentially extracting premium value in return. Now let's talk about what kind of return would make sense for Detroit in a hypothetical Montgomery trade scenario. The Lions aren't going to move a player of his caliber for mid-round draft picks or depth pieces. If they're going to pull the trigger on something like this, it needs to address a critical need on the roster. The most obvious area where Detroit could use an upgrade is in the secondary, specifically at cornerback. We've dealt with a brutal string of injuries in our defensive backfield, and while our front seven has been dominant, we've seen opposing quarterbacks exploit our coverage on the outside when we're not at full strength. If a trade package came together that brought back a legitimate starting cornerback, ideally someone young and under team control for multiple years, plus additional draft capital like a first-round pick, that's the kind of deal that would at least warrant serious consideration. The other factor to consider here is the draft capital aspect. First-round picks are incredibly valuable in today's NFL because of the fifth-year option for first-round selections and the cost-control contracts for rookie deals. If the Lions could flip Montgomery for a first-rounder, they'd be adding another premium asset to continue building this roster while maintaining financial flexibility. That's how you sustain excellence in this league, by constantly replenishing talent through the draft while managing your cap situation intelligently. It's not the most emotionally satisfying approach for fans who've fallen in love with these players, but it's how successful organizations operate. I want to be crystal clear about something, though. As of right now, this is all theoretical discussion. Montgomery hasn't been mentioned in any concrete trade rumors since joining the Lions. There haven't been reports of teams calling about his availability. The front office hasn't indicated any desire to move him. This is analysis based on roster construction realities and long-term planning considerations, not breaking news about an imminent trade. Montgomery is still a Lion. He's still a crucial part of what we're trying to accomplish. And he's going to continue being a major contributor as we chase this championship that's been so long in the making for this city. What this really comes down to is the inevitable tension between winning now and building for sustained success. The Lions are in win-now mode. There's no question about that. We've got a roster loaded with talent, a coaching staff that's proven they can compete with anyone, and a fan base that's hungrier than ever to see this team bring home a championship. Montgomery is a big part of that equation right now. But smart organizations are always thinking 2, 3, 4 years down the line, making sure they're not mortgaging the future for short-term gains. If the front office determines that moving Montgomery after 2025 positions them better for long-term success, even if it's painful in the moment, that's a decision they have to at least explore. So what does all this mean for us as Lions fans? First and foremost, we need to appreciate what we have right now with this backfield combination. We're witnessing something special, something historic, and we shouldn't take a single carry for granted. Whether Montgomery finishes his career in Detroit or eventually moves on to another team, the impact he's had on this organization and this resurgence we're experiencing will never be forgotten. Second, we need to trust that the front office has a plan. They've earned that trust through the moves they've made, the culture they built, and the results we're seeing on the field. If they decide Montgomery's future lies elsewhere, it'll be because they've identified a path that makes this team better, not because they're being careless with our assets. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. How do you feel about the possibility of Montgomery being traded after the 2025 season? Do you think the Lions should prioritize keeping both backs together as long as possible? Or does it make more sense to cash in on Montgomery's value while it's at its peak and fully commit to Gibbs as the feature back? What kind of return would you need to see to feel good about a Montgomery trade? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I genuinely want to know how the Lions faithful are processing the situation. If you want to stay on top of every development, With the Detroit Lions, every rumor, every analysis, every breaking story. Make sure you're subscribed to Lions News Fan Report and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Smash that like button if you appreciated this breakdown, and share this video with your fellow Lions fans so we can get a real conversation going about the future of this franchise. I'll be here bringing you the most comprehensive Lions coverage you'll find anywhere. So stick with me as we continue this incredible journey together. Until next time, stay passionate, stay informed, and let's keep roaring for our Detroit Lions!